Time, Madam Clerk?
It is 3:04.
Okay. Roll call, señorita.
Chairman Matt Martinez,
Present.
Commissioner Lauren Martinez. I spoke to Commissioner Lauren Martinez, and she's withdrawing from the commission. She said she was very busy at this time, and it'd be best to appoint somebody else. So,
You'll talk to the mayor?
I already did. Counselor Olivari is trying to get somebody else to recommend someone in his ward.
Okay.
And then he'll give that name to the mayor, and we'll put that name on the agenda as soon as I get it.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Commissioner Benito Pacheco?
Present.
Commissioner Meredith Brett? Here. Commissioner Joseph Cruz?
Present.
Commissioner Ashley Arianes?
Present.
And Commissioner Joseph Dominguez?
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is approval of the agenda. We've got a couple of items. Is there any suggestions or modifications or moving of items around, or are we looking at approving as presented?
Make a motion that we move as presented.
Second. There's a motion to approve and a second. Roll call?
Commissioner Brett?
Yes.
Commissioner Pacheco?
Yes.
Commissioner Cruz?
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez?
Yes.
Commissioner Arianes?
Yes.
I have a motion by Commissioner Arianes, a second by Commissioner Dominguez. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got two sets of minutes, and hopefully you all had a chance to review it. I checked them out, and I guess we had a lot of work for Gino, from what I can tell. I'm saying, what in the world happened there? And so, did you make a good list, Mr. Attorney?
I did. I wrote up stuff based on that list.
Okay, so let's do this, if you don't mind, I probably appreciate that we do one at a time of the minutes. So November 19th we'll do first. So if you all have reviewed that, if you have any questions, suggestions, modifications, if not, I will also entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 19th.
I second that motion. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of those items on that agenda? None? Okay. Roll call.
Thanks.
Commissioner Dominguez?
Yes.
Commissioner Arianes? Commissioner Cruz?
Yes.
Commissioner Brett?
Yes.
I have a motion by Commissioner Brett, a second by Commissioner Cruz. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries.
Okay, next is the December 4th minutes. And I personally think you did an outstanding job on both of them, Cassandra. Trying to keep track of all our discussion and putting us in the right place. So I guess you have a lot of practice. So like this one, I will also entertain a motion to approve, or if there's any changes, modifications that might need to be considered.
I'll make the motion.
Motions, or a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Did you get that, Cassandra? Okay. Roll call.
Commissioner Cruz?
Yes.
Commissioner Brett?
Yes.
Commissioner Pacheco?
Yes.
Commissioner Arianes?
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez?
Yes.
I have a motion by Commissioner Arianes, a second by Commissioner Brett. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries.
Next item is public input. Cassandra?
We have no public input this afternoon.
Thank you. All right, I think what we'll do is maybe listen to what Dino has to tell us first because of the assignment that we gave him in various forms. And then we'll sort of catch up. And I think we were looking at doing section 2 and 3 today. Okay.
Yes.
But I hope everybody had a chance. And don't forget that you guys can also, review certain sections or highlight them, and we'll talk about that individually. So I'm gonna turn it over to you, Mr. Zamora, so you can give us your update on all of the aforementioned Homework.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. From my notes from our December 4th meeting, there were three, I go back and forth between calling them proposals, discussion proposals, concepts. We don't want to give them too much weight or cause too much controversy, but there were three items discussed, and I was asked to make some drafts on that. The first being to correct the language in section 2.01 of the charter regarding corporate authority. The old version had 5 city councilors with 4 of them districted and a 5th one at large, which under New Mexico statutes, section 3-12-1.1, it actually violates that part of statute. For the size that Las Vegas is, every counselor is required to be districted. And so the way that the city has adapted is they've had 4 city councilors. They've dropped the 5th at large, but the language in the charter doesn't reflect that. So the first concept that I've drafted based on suggestions from the commission is simply correcting that and stating that there are 4 members, each from single-member districts. The second concept, for discussion purposes going forward, was the concept of increasing the number of counselors, doubling the number of counselors from 4 to 8, going back to the future, I guess, on that and examining that. So I made the corrections to comply with statute, making it single-member districts, but then going from 4 to 8. That's concept 2, and I'm going to hand out the language in a second. The third thing I have in my notes is for discussion purposes, to draft up an amendment to section 2.06 of the charter regarding mayor and governing body compensation. And from my notes, that was to propose raising it or discuss whether or not it should be raised from 10,000 to 15,000 for each of the positions. And so that's what I've drafted, and that's what's ready for today. And some copies out.
So maybe, do you have a comment, Cassandra?
No.
Okay, Commissioner. Maybe.
Gina, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm thinking, maybe we should discuss these before we move on to the next. Is that okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you're a sticker on where we should be, but I want to make sure we cover this ground.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, I agreed to kind of go over this. I know I missed last meeting just because of my own doings, but
You missed it, you're done, it's over. That discussion,
Over.
Ashley took care of it, it's a done thing, it's over. No, I'm-
I would like to kind of go over this a little further
Yeah.
because this is a very important section. And I think we should kind of go over a little more before moving
that's the
forward. I think so.
Okay, so let's just start right away. Go ahead if you have any concerns, Joe, and then we're gonna go with Meredith right after you, okay? Go ahead.
Let me just kind of look at it
Oh, okay.
first.
So go, Meredith, go ahead.
Well, my thought is, why couldn't we present the 4 counselors and the 8 counselors, 2 options to the council? Done deal.
Well, I would think that they're looking at us to give them direction, first and foremost. Now, we can present 4, we can present 8, they can change it themselves, right? Gino, that's pretty much the way that works.
Your advisory
Yeah.
to the city council.
So my recommendation is that we give them a recommendation, whether it's one or the other. I'm hoping it's the larger one, myself. But, and then we're gonna have a joint meeting with them, and we'll be able to discuss that in more detail.
And both fix the problem of 5, which is the bottom line.
Yeah, well, the 5's gone, that was unconstitutional, right?
Well, it's not gone.
No, the 5's gone.
Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
Or-
We're gonna make it, but it's gone already because you guys you can't have a fifth counselor, right?
Right. By operation of law, you're not able to do it. However, the language is still there and the language.
We gotta refresh that. Is that fine? Is that fine with you, Meredith? Did we
Yeah,
answer your
that's
question?
that's our purpose.
Okay. So I say we recommend something and let them come back to us.
So if I may at this
Go
time, then, like, to follow up on what you guys are saying, I kind of do agree as well too, like, they made this commission, so we give them recommendations. Not so we could give them 3, 4 different options, but give them a recommendation of what we're going for, and they voted in or they voted out. I kind of agree with Chairman Martinez that I think we should give them the recommendation of 1, and they say yay or nay on it.
Well, hopefully,
In my recommendation
they'll
is
send it back to us for review.
right, okay, and then we review it and see, go from there. And my recommendation is I'd rather go with the larger number. I'd like to see 8. And right now, like, there's 4 members right now, you know, one of them's been sick for a good while and all that. It makes it a lot harder, you know, only having 3 at that time. And, you know, it's just I believe it gives it more equality on decisions and balance when you have more members to kind of discuss things than the fewer itself.
Should we vote?
Well, let's do this. Let's
get discussions.
Let's get a little more discussion. Benito, you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like a little bit more discussion on and my apologies, because I wasn't at the last meeting. But doubling the size. There's some conversation. I'd just like to get a bit of background on the thought process as well as comparison, right, to other municipalities throughout the state. Where would we fall in terms of a community our size with a council that large? Right, so I would just like a little bit more discussion before I would be comfortable with a recommendation, making a recommendation.
That's good. So, anybody else have a question?
No question.
Okay.
Just that we have seen how 8 works here.
Yes. And if you don't mind, Benito and Joe, both of you were not here at our last meeting where, I guess that may have been one of the bigger topics that we talked about. So I want to give you a perspective because I happen to be a counselor under 8. And I was mayor with 8. But what I've seen happen since then, it's been really tough. In fact, I'm going to say since Tony Marquez, former mayor, we went to 4, right, about that time.
Yeah.
And literally, from that point to this, I guarantee you more than half of the votes, up until maybe recently, were split by the mayor. Pretty much. What it boils down to is 2 councilors with the mayor, pretty much ran the city for the last number of years, okay? But I didn't have to experience that, so I experienced what 8 felt like. I was a counselor for Ward 4. So I served that ward with Alfredito Maes back in the day, and then Eddie Trujillo won that election. So I ended up doing 2 years with Alfredito and 2 with Eddie, and I had an opportunity to work with a counselor from our district. We were able at the time to do some major projects for our district. The first one being we converted old South Public School grounds, I guess, into the park, South Public Park now. Or South Pacific Park, I don't even know what the name of it is anymore. And then we also were able to move the police station to Old Town, where it's currently at. So that's one of the things that I thought was able to be accomplished. Now, let me just step a little bit ahead and give a little history if you don't know it. I hope I'm not boring anybody, but when the community saw that the city council, and I was no longer here at the time, was considering increasing the pay for city councilors, that was an item of discussion during that time. The community decided, well, we're not going to tolerate any of that. We're just going to cut it in half. So that's exactly what they did. They did a special petition, we had a special election, and we went from 8 to 4. Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, the district's lost representation, okay, personally. But that was the wishes of the community, and that's what we did. So one of the things that I've observed through the last 2 or 3 administrations is, yes, the mayor sides with 2. It's a pretty much, the other 2 are just looking in the door. And literally during the time of Mayor Tony Marquez, the council one night switched power at a special meeting at middle school. I don't know if you were there, Cassandra, or not, but this meeting was between Feldman, Diane Moore, Morris Madrid, our finance director, and Crucito Roybal. The mayor, when he walked into that meeting, was siding with Feldman and Moore. After the discussion of making rotaries on Grand Avenue, the power shifted in that one meeting with that one item to Councilman Cruz Roybal and Councilman Morris Madrid. So at that point, it went from 2 in the mayor this direction to 2 in the mayor the other direction. And from that point forward, the mayor sided with those other 2, and that's the way the end of the term went. It was interesting to see that one item changed it all.
You mean traffic circles over
Yeah, they
there?
were gonna make rotaries on Grand. So,
At 7th Street.
no, it was at National and at Lincoln. It was crazy. So, yeah, Andy Feldman was here, and that died. So they didn't put those rotaries in, or whatever they're called. They're all over the place now, you've probably seen them. So I've really seen that it's been very decisive for the community, because, well, you know, at one time, I think it was Mayor Tonita Gurule had an item in regards to the city manager extending the contract. That was another thing too, that it came to a 2-2 tie, landed up in district court, and a whole bunch of stuff, you know, transpired. Those things will be eliminated when you add more counselors. Why? Because I think the opportunity for the council themselves to build consensus, and really what it boils down to at the end of the day, they need to learn how to work with each other to get to what's in the best interest of the general public. So that's what I see from my personal perspective. I'm hoping it doesn't sway anybody one way or another, but I was there, did both sides, so I sort of saw how it happened, but, Ashley?
My only question is, do you recall why the city was in favor of moving it down to 4?
I do.
Yeah, it was because of the pay.
The pay, that's what I was kind of,
The pay was being considered, I think, at 25,000, 20,000,
At least 20.
18, I don't know. It was a very big number. And I think prior to that, I don't know if it was 10,000, it could have been 7,500, I don't know what it was back in the day, but I can tell you that that was the only reason. They decided, if you guys are considering raising it, we're going to cut you in half, and that's what they did. So I think we have to be careful with compensation, but, you know, that's 15 years ago now or more.
well, and I think
The world has changed. What can you get for $10,000 a year salary?
We thought it would be a more efficient government and more efficient financially. And now that we've seen it, I would go with the 8.
As part of my discussion as well, I believe having a number of 8 actually gives the city better networking. You know, there's always lots of events, lots of functions going on inside and outside of our community, you know, for legislature, things like that. It gives, for example, if there's only 4 council members and, you know, some are working full-time jobs, some can't get away to go do business of the city that we need to. But if there's 8, out of those 8, I'm sure, you know, you're gonna get some to be able to go do some networking for the city and go out there. You know, it gives you a better option for networking and partnerships for different things within the community, you know, and outside of the community too, as well. You know, it gives more visibility of the city itself, having more members, I believe.
Yeah. More of them could show up in an event without an illegal quorum.
Right.
Yeah, that's actually an issue right now, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's a meeting tomorrow scheduled at Highlands, and there's a good chance that there'll be a quorum.
It's not an issue if you post it.
Yeah, but
Possible quorum.
But what if you don't post it? It could be just, you know, and you don't know if an event can happen.
Fiestas.
Just for an example, during the emergency, I happened to go with my brother to the makeshift mayor manager office at the fire station. And literally, the mayor is just counting counselors. If one counselor walked into the room and the second one came in, he walked out. You know, and that's a hard thing, especially when it's as vital as the flooding was at that time. So those are real important things. I think the mayor can't even meet with two counselors at once. That's a quorum. You can only meet one at a time.
Right.
That's really difficult. Before, if you have 8, you can meet up to 3 at a time. So those are all things to consider. I want to make sure that we cover the grounds. Are we covering some pretty good stuff?
Yes,
You know-
yes, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, part of my concern though of doubling the size is that one, it was the will of the community at some point that they voted on. So there's that for me to consider. And let me just backtrack. I do agree that there are very many valid points for increasing the size. That being said, another consideration I have is that if I research communities of our size throughout the state, there's not a single one with a council of 8. So we would be setting ourselves up for larger government, if you will, which I'm not opposed to, but that's just a consideration, right? And I realize it's probably 8 based on the 4 districts and doubling the number of counselors in each district. So I understand that. But those are just some of my thoughts at this point. You know, if we look down the road to Santa Fe, which is probably 3 times our population, if not more, they have a city council of 8. And if I look at other communities, let's say Farmington or Las Cruces, their councils are going to be 4. Much larger communities in Las Vegas. There lies a rub for me. So that's just part of my thought right now.
And if you don't mind, I can jump into a couple of those.
Sure.
That was prior to me. 1968, the community voted to consolidate the towns. And there were 4 and 4 and a mayor. So when they consolidated in 70, they brought the 4 and 4. And that's how they landed up with 8 back in the day. So Santa Fe had 9 councilors at one time because they had an at-large before the at-large became an issue. Sam Pick was mayor. So Raton has a commission, so they don't vote for a mayor. They vote for 5 city councilors, I think, and they pick a mayor. Silver City, I don't know. That's probably the most comparable size for Las Vegas. It's Silver City and Artesia, I think, are the 2 closest to our size. Artesia's within 100 people of population of Las Vegas that I know of. I don't know, Gino, you might know more if you've had an opportunity to check the numbers.
As you're citing cities, I'm going and looking.
Okay.
You're just going a little fast for me.
Oh, I'm okay. I can slow down. I
But
can
that
slow down
said,
if you like.
population-wise, I'll see what they say about Silver City.
Are we limited-
Artesia does have 8. You're correct there.
Yeah, I think Artesia does. have
Artesia
it.
has 8
Are we
councilors.
limited to 4 districts?
So I was doing that research as you were speaking. The short answer is no, you are not limited to 4 districts. You are limited, there are several statutes at play from the municipal code. I believe you're limited to no more than 10 counselors from what I just read here. You're also allowed, and there's different language in different sections where I've cited single-member districts. For my drafting, there's another section of the municipal code that says that you can have dual-member districts so long as both members aren't elected in the same year. And that's how Santa Fe does it. Santa Fe has 8 counselors, 4 districts, and they're dual-member districts. 4 districts, 2 counselors, and each one is up every other year, so that they serve 4-year terms.
That's what the way it was here.
If we chose 5 or 6 districts, it would take a long time to redistrict.
Well, it's gonna be a little more complicated during the census, yeah.
Yeah, if, I believe Albuquerque does individual districts, and they're either 7 or 9 in Albuquerque.
There's 9 because they have a president.
There you go. And the mayor does not participate in their legislative
Like
meetings.
Congress there.
And so, you've got all these varied numbers, but some are single-member districts like Albuquerque where they've got up to 9. Or Santa Fe is another example where it's a 4-member district.
I think Albuquerque's the only city that does it that way. The mayor's sort of the executive part of government.
They've got what's called the strong mayor system.
Yeah.
And yes, they function more like the state or the national governance than traditional municipalities in New Mexico.
One other point, you were concerned, Benito, about that the people had elected to go to 4, but the people will vote on this. When
Okay,
it goes from us to the city council and then to the people.
okay. That's a,
Yeah, this goes to the vote for the community.
But as far as I know, that was the reason, right? That was the axe they were grinding. They just didn't, you're not gonna do that. You're not gonna increase the pay that much, and now we have 8 of you to do it, and it's just crazy. So it would make sense.
And there was a lot of hot air
At that time, there
at
was.
that time.
Yes, there was. So,
I didn't say that.
any other discussion about consideration of 8 and 4? Is that, do we need any more information from Gino possibly?
I can read through the edits really quick so
Okay.
everyone's familiar with them. What I did in concept 1, and again, just to keep them from getting controversial and, you're proposing and you're changing everything. No, these are just real discussions that you wanted to have. So concept 1, I did use the language single-member districts. However, that can go to, it could state dual member if your discussion goes that way. Well, not on concept 1, that doesn't apply. When we get to concept 2, it'll apply. But, so the only edits that were made were to paragraph B of section 2.01, where it says the corporate authority of the city shall be vested in the governing body, which shall consist of 4 city councilors, changing it down from 5. Who shall be, I didn't think whom was appropriate once I made these edits, so who shall be elected from single-member districts and shall collectively comprise the city council and the mayor who shall be presiding over the officer of the governing body. So the change I made in the second part, the changes I made from 5 to 4, adding the language single-member districts to create those 4 positions, each from separate districts, from 4 separate districts. So that's concept 1. Any questions on that one? And if things were to remain the same, that's the language that reflects how the city's currently operating. Okay? Either way, a fix to this paragraph B needs to be made, regardless of how it's made. Concept 2, making it compliant with New Mexico statute, electing from single-member districts, although as I've mentioned, subsequent research shows we could do dual-member districts, increasing the number of councilors to 8. So paragraph B, as it's currently drafted, is corporate authority of the city shall be vested in the governing body, which shall consist of 8 instead of 5 city councilors, who shall be elected from single-member districts and shall collectively comprise the city council, and a mayor who shall be presiding officer of the governing body. So that's the edit there. That's the language for 8 single-member districts. And again, it's actually, I cited 312.2.1, but actually 312.2 is the one that talks about dual member districts.
So Gino, real quick, from single member,
Yes.
if you have two counselors in one district, is it,
That's a dual member district.
okay, so we'd be going,
So the language I drafted here, 8 members, 8 separate districts.
but if we had what we considered earlier, or at least talked about earlier, with no.
If you had 4 districts with 2 members from each,
It's-
yeah, then I would call that dual member. The edits I would make, and I can add that as another concept here, is,
I get the sense that's what we're all thinking.
okay.
2 per district, 4 districts.
Okay, and I didn't have that in my notes, so I drafted it this way. I can revise this concept too. The next, for the next meeting, I'll revise that to be 8 members, dual member districts. There are some other changes that would need to come in. I've got open Santa Fe's charter. And it just talks about, you'd probably either have to add to probably a paragraph C to concept 2 that would talk about how they're elected, that they're elected in different elections and that they're staggered for 4-year terms. And that was something that I felt was expressed really well in Santa Fe's charter. Give me 1 second just to see where
There
it
is language to that effect in Article 2.
I mean, see, okay. I will go back and look at that.
It's 2 one time and 2 the other, 2 years later.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the way it was before. Cassandra, you were here before, right? When there was 8?
No.
You were not.
I was here, but I wasn't in the office of the city clerk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, you tell me your perspective from your own.
No, I
But
never,
I know it's been pretty interesting ever since, right, with the 4? Because they went to court. Yeah,
it'll be interesting either 4 or 8.
yeah, okay. She's not gonna commit, did you see that? Did you see that? Oh, man. I saw that. She's very diplomatic, by the way.
And always has a smile.
Yeah. Okay, she's up to something, okay, we just don't know what it is.
The smartest way to like go about business is just to smile and agree to everything. Smile and agree.
Okay, any other questions about the corporate authority for, concept number 2? Okay, Gino, you'll take back and come back with
Yes, I'll make those edits.
concept number 2.
Concept.
Okay, now let's jump into, is it concept 3? So,
Yes.
okay, that one I think is a sticky wicket.
It's when you're talking about money, it's always a slippery slope, right?
And I guess I can add, and hopefully these numbers are correct. Here as of late, the county commission has increased the pay for county commissioners. I can't remember, 30-something to 33-something or 35-something per year, right? I think they went up, I think it came on the paper or somewhere I saw it.
And that was gonna be part of my point of discussion, or point of my discussion is that why is there such a discrepancy between commissioner pay and counselor pay? Because it's quite extreme.
Right.
And I don't know if that's a norm. Is that something that we see in other municipalities and counties, or is that unique to San Miguel and Las Vegas?
It is, what the norm throughout the state is that it varies greatly. It varies greatly on the municipal level. I've seen compensation as low as about 5,000 per year. And as high, the highest I'm aware of is Santa Fe at 38. There is a statute that caps it, and I believe it currently caps it around 40,000. So it's an up to amount. But I've seen the full range from about 5 to 38. And I can look up and see what Albuquerque's is. I'd imagine they'd probably top themselves out, and they might be in a different class of municipalities that allows them to go higher.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because if you look at ours roughly, city councilors paid 66% or compensated 66% less, more or less, than a county commissioner. When responsibilities for governor, it's from the outside looking in, to me,
It's greater.
Is greater.
is greater and there's, you know, if not very similar.
We send it
Is
to
there,
the
do we have any idea of how they, like, what was the point of the increase, or what was the validation for the increase? For the,
The county? The county now?
Yeah.
I think, the last election approved it, right, Gino? For, counties to go up,
The
So,
county makes their decision.
but they got authority from the legislature, right? I thought.
their ranges probably went up because it's the statute that shows the cap of what can be paid to counties. This is more research that I'll look at. But I don't think that there's anything that mandates the compensation to be in the charter, meaning that some entities, here the county, I think some municipalities, they can change their compensation by ordinance. I'm gonna look, I might be wrong on that point, but I believe there's some authority to change by ordinance rather than by charter. And therefore, for those entities that don't have to go to a vote, and I don't believe the county has to go to a vote, they do it by ordinance, then they're able to make those amendments themselves.
I think the only thing they cannot do is increase their current pay in the current position they're in. So what they're doing is saying the next person that fills this seat will get paid the new rate.
The next term.
Yeah, the next term, yeah. That's how, I think that's the way it works for all of it.
15,000 is very reasonable. At the same time, my thought is, what can we afford as a city? And also, if we're paying 5 people 10,000 right now, that's 50,000. And the mayor. And if
Is
we
the mayor the
pay,
same?
yes,
It is?
it's here. And if we pay 9 people 15,000, that's 135,000 rather than 50. That's gonna shock people. I mean, it's not a lot, but people are gonna recoil.
I think we had talked in our last meeting about inviting, Mr. Madrid, right? Is
Oh,
what
yeah, to
we
the,
did to discuss it, yeah, to kind of discuss the finances, because I had, not that it's I mean, it would be nice to kind of see where our budget's at, considering there were so many vacancies for such a long time, and I think the last time we discussed how the budget was in pretty good condition, considering, you know, except for with the exception of the water crisis, but for the most part, the budget was pretty good. And then I think during the last city council meeting that I listened to, Mr. Madrid's report was pretty, I think we're in a decent financial position.
And one thing about a higher pay is you get more candidates.
Right.
Well, and that was Commissioner Dominguez's recommendation, because, you know, I think you would kind of retain like some interest, you know, because right now, as is, it's really difficult to find. I think personally for me, I think it's very difficult to find 4 candidates at $10,000, because you're the point of contact for that district, you're the only point of contact. But then I think if you moved it to 2, and we had talked about that also, like, you know, if you have 2 people 2 people kind of responsible for that district, or, you know, representing the district, then you would have kind of like a shared responsibility. And I think that it would kind of like, at least in my opinion, it might even get more interest, because you'd have more than one counselor, you know, responsible for kind of helping the people of their district, their constituents.
And there are other benefits. Health insurance,
Yes,
what else?
health insurance and the stipend, I think, that's it.
And there's also retirement in there.
Now, you
might
can
just
opt
run for
in or
county
out of
commissioner.
retirement, right?
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So I think, actually, the last meeting you said, well, how do we get young people attracted to coming in if it's only 10,000 a year? Because right now, what we're attracting is people that are close to retirement age or are retired.
Don't need the money.
Yeah, and they're saying, well, I want to do it because I want to, I'll take the 10,000, that's gonna be for lunch, But that's, I think you said that the last meeting too. How do we attract
How do
a
you
younger
attract
demographic of representatives or to consider running if the pay's so low?
Or just not have candidates unopposed. Just have more than one candidate.
Or I even think like at best, with the purest intentions, just to have, at least a good mix up. It can't just be, no offense if you're over a certain age, but to have representation of younger people and older people kind of, working together to share the interest of the town. I mean, I think
Section.
No, I think
Thank you, Commissioner Arianes. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just one piece of information here. I believe I was the one that came up with that dollar amount from a budget conscious perspective. We have to confirm with Mr. Madrid, obviously, that the city's in good standing from a budget perspective. But maybe since this is open up for discussion now, and Mr. Pacheco has made a couple of good points, I'm in favor of both options at this point until further discussion, either 4 or 8. But I mean, I don't know. Is there a reason why the difference is so high from county commission to city councilor? And if we're at a crossroads here, do we increase? See, if we increase, it favors a current council or potential individuals to run from the community, right? If we just increase the pay and leave it with 4, then you're gonna have more competitive elections, right? If we increase the pay, leave it at 4, but increase it to what, right? That's the question mark. Now, if we have 8, we can't increase it that much because then we're going to kill the budget. So I think those are the two questions I think that we may need to hone in on is, do we increase it substantially and get really competitive, right, at 4? I'm saying 20, 25, somewhere in there. Or do we leave it at this budget conscious $15,000 to $17,000 mark and have 8? But we can't have it both ways, I don't think, from a sole budget perspective. We can't pay 8, 20. I mean, maybe we can, but I don't know if the community would really like 8 at $25,000. They would probably digest 8 at 15 from the outside looking in. But that's the question. I think that's kind of where we're at.
You do wanna,
Me, myself, as a community member, I think I'd be able to digest 15 with 8 members.
But not.
No,
Yeah, I find so.
not with 8 members. But then again, what does our budget look like?
Right. So we're kind of talking what ifs, but that's just where I think we're at. So we don't. I just don't want this one topic about funding and budgets and about number of counselors and not to take up the next 2-3 meetings. That's just my perspective.
Ash, you saying?
I was just saying I feel like a bleeding heart because I was more interested in having more counselors for more representation for like the good of the city, not necessarily like
That's
the
money.
like not necessarily making a career out of being a counselor. I mean, some of the contracts through the state are what, 25,000 at most, like, and the requirements for a counselor aren't, outrageous. I mean, I think that I think at 8 and 15 that's a pretty good deal in my opinion. Yeah, and then you also get those benefits and you get the retirement. I mean, that's a pretty nice deal.
Well, I'll say this, I think that, from my perspective, if we wanna increase participation in municipal government, there has to be more compensation involved. If you look at our current compensation for city councilors, and I'm just doing a quick Google search, so I'll qualify that, I mean, this isn't official data. We're at the very, very bottom end of communities of our size. Even if we go up to the proposal of 15,000 a year, that would put us on still at the pretty low end of the spectrum.
Poverty wages.
The average for the state is in the neighborhood of about $27,000. If you look at average, if you take all the city council pay and average it out throughout the state of New Mexico, the average 27. I'm not saying that that's what it should be here. But when you look at that average is much more in line with the county commission for San Miguel County. That's much more in line with what they are receiving. And if part of the intent is to increase participation in elections to candidates, I think that is a prime example there. How many of the most recent elections have we seen go unopposed at the county commission level? Huh?
And city level.
Well, at the county commission level, you don't really see it. They haven't been unopposed. At the city level,
Yeah.
you've been
About
seeing them are primarily unopposed. And to the point of more participation, well, it is not a viable option for younger individuals to give of their time and energy for that rate of pay that we currently offer, right? I have to concur with your comment, Mr. Chairman, in that we've set up the pay structure to basically limit ourselves to retiring individuals that use that money for, their lunch and maybe a little golf over here across the street throughout the year. But it's not much for an individual with potentially a young family to make the commitment. It's just not rewarding enough in terms of the financial aspect right now.
I do want for 1 minute recognize the fact that we have our mayor in the audience. And he hasn't told me anything, but I'm gonna suggest that the mayor get paid way more, because he's here all the time. He never gets a break. In fact, I don't even think he has lunch anymore, because he doesn't have time. Because it's been one crisis after another since he's been in the door, so. But Mayor, you're more welcome to join in on the discussion, and maybe some of the stuff you've heard from the city councilor. We're still planning to visit with you about both the size of the council and the compensation. So we're literally at the compensation piece right now, so you're more than welcome.
No, I like the discussion. I don't want to influence any of the discussion you're having, so I'm just here to listen. In my perspective, in my opinion, I think it's best to just let you guys, come up with what you come up with.
Thank you, Mayor. But thank you for being here. We appreciate that very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor,
one concern is that when the people vote, they will vote on the entire charter, and if they object to any one part of it, the whole thing is thrown out.
but that's almost what Gino was saying a little bit earlier. We could carve that piece out, right, Gino? Knowing that it could be an issue.
Yes, you can.
Individual.
There are a few things. I've been researching as you're speaking. So currently, City of Las Vegas places in the charter the compensation amounts. I was trying to see how Santa Fe did it, and here's what they say. They have a section in their ordinances, actually, and not in their charter. It's silent in the charter as far as compensation goes. And so in their ordinances, it has two things. Where am I? I just lost the section. Compensation of mayor and city councilors. The mayor shall receive compensation for his or her service to the city as determined by the Independent Salary Commission pursuant to section blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you why it says that. Santa Fe adopted a full-time mayor by charter probably more than 8 years ago. Mayor Weber, who's wrapping up his term, is the very first full-time mayor. And that's why they have a salary commission, and that's why a salary commission sets that. So I'm not necessarily sure that you need to adopt anything like that. However, here's the section that I think applies most to your discussion. Again, this is in ordinance, not in charter. The councilors shall receive compensation for their services to the city in an amount equal to the maximum amount authorized by the legislature to be paid county commissioners in Class A counties, as provided in section I wish I'd have seen this section a minute ago. Section 4-44-4, New Mexico statutes annotated, and as may be amended thereafter from time to time.
We don't make a decision. They
So-
pass it over to the county.
They pass it to the legislature, who could update it at any time. And so the legislature, by setting county salaries, then ends up setting
City council.
city council. And it's not salaries, it's compensation. So-
That's interesting.
So, yeah, it's not in charter, it's in ordinance, and then they pass it over to the legislature from the ordinance. And now, as you continued your discussions, I'll go look at section 4-44-4 to see how they define Class A counties. And maybe, within the next 5 minutes, I'll be able to tell you what Class A, Class B, Class C compensation is.
Oh, man, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They wash their hands.
Yes.
The mayor has a salary commission, but the council is tied to the county as per charter. And what the legislature does with the adjustment of the salaries on Class A counties pretty much sets the pay for the council. What does the mayor of Santa Fe make?
They just revised it. I want to say it's somewhere around 130,000
For a full-timer?
for a full-time mayor. Correct. And there's discussion there also, different economy, different everything. There was significant discussion on the salary commission as to whether that was sufficient to attract the type of full-time mayor that they were looking for. But the commission settled on that number, somewhere around 130, up from about 120, plus or minus.
I was kind of surprised here though to see that the mayor made equal to the city councilors. And I thought the mayor had a little more increase.
I know,
I
poor
was
David.
so surprised
over
on that,
here.
you know what I mean? It's,
I was about to say, I feel like he's a full-time mayor. I mean,
but I did, that was surprising to me. I thought the mayor, made a little more than the actual councilors themselves. But
I'm not gonna tell you what I made. I don't wanna upset him.
As Chairman Martinez spoke to earlier, I think maybe now this is all up for discussion then, since we're on this topic. I think we should figure out the number of city councilors, a pay that we can all agree on, and also a section in there that either updates or modifies the mayor's pay. Because for me, looking at this line item there, I don't see how that's even an equitable decision at all. So,
Councilor Dominguez, Mr. Chair, I do agree with you, but I think that in light of the information that's been provided, in terms of how pay structures can be, or compensation structures can be set up, I think that needs to be explored. And we have to have a real discussion, should it even be part of the charter? Or should it be
Ordinance.
like an ordinance? That is a matter for discussion. And then if we decide upon that, then I from what I gather, some of the other compensation packages are tied to counties or other entities within their areas, right? And some of the decision making is done by logic, by math, and what the averages are in those areas. I think that would be something for me that would be interesting for this community to consider.
Any other further discussion?
I would suggest maybe at the next, or requesting maybe that Mr. Madrid comes in on the next meeting, and then we can kind of get that input of where our budget's at and explore it more, to really be thorough about it.
I think we should, Sandra, if we can, get Morris to join us. talk about that. I think that no matter what happens, the city's budget can always be adjusted to take care of the leadership of the community. I think, you know, when Commissioner Benito talked about the fact that, the average is 27,000, from the numbers you just saw briefly like that,
Yeah.
that's average for New Mexico's city councilors. That's, whoa, we're way off. We're a third, almost a third of that number. And then I guess what I'd like to also know, and I don't know how much work this would be, Gino or not, but, or I don't know, maybe Cassandra can help, but maybe we got comparable community sizes of council pay and mayor pay. I think that would be good.
I would like to see that comparison.
Because I think, Ashley, you did make a point. This mayor is full-time.
I'm texting him about other issues while we're in this.
Yeah,
meeting,
and
so-
you know, there's like, really? And I think it was always the same for both mayor and council. I think, it's been like that all along. But nonetheless, and then we've also had mayors that are absent, you know, and it hurt, and you can tell that. So those are the things that, I think we have to consider, but is that something you can do, Gino, you and maybe you, Sandra, work on those two?
We can split that up. We'll talk and we'll split that up. I do have some clarification on what I talked about with Santa Fe and pegging it to county compensation. There's a whole section in the county statutes regarding compensation and classification of counties for salary purposes. And it says that, so Class A counties are counties with a population of 100,000 persons or more within the county. And fully assessed valuation over $75 million. I don't believe San Miguel County exceeds 100,000, so that would push you to a Class B county, which is under 100,000, and full assessed valuation of over $75 million. I don't know if the whole county is assessed at over 75 million, but it sounds plausible. There is a Class B lower valuation if you fall under $75 million for the land value of the entirety of the county. Let's just go with the assumption that you're a Class B high valuation. In those circumstances, by the way, there's also a Class H county, but that isn't going to apply here.
Harding, that's probably Harding County, 200 people.
It's it's these small counties, and I can't even imagine who fits in it except maybe Los Alamos. It's counties made up of 200 square miles or fewer. And I'm going to say San Miguel's far greater than that. You're one of the larger counties in the state.
We compete with Rhode Island.
So, assuming we're a Class B high valuation county in San Miguel County, then the county commission compensation is set by statute as $30,196. And so if you were thinking of doing what Santa Fe does, which is peg your council compensation to your commission compensation, that would be what's comparable, which is.
What's B lower valuation?
On the lower valuation, I have it over here. It's 21,534.
From 21 to 30.
Yeah, 21 to, yeah.
And just for reference, I'm continuing just to look up different communities around us. Taos, New Mexico in 2014, their counselor pay was $18,000. That's 2014, 10 years ago. I'm sure it's increased, I know.
I really didn't realize it
Yeah.
was 10. That is just a,
It's pretty low. But if I may,
it's not much.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Gino, I think it would be helpful for me and for the commission if we were able to get a comparison of municipalities that are similar to Las Vegas, which are ordinance and which are charter in terms of compensation. And then a list of the counselor compensation for those communities as well. So those two pieces of data for communities that are similar to Las Vegas. And I think something that would be interesting, of course, would be, even though maybe a little larger, but you have Taos, you have Española, Silver City, Artesia, and any others that,
That's probably about as close as we can get. I was shocked, well, 18,000 in 2014?
18,000 in 2014.
That's Taos.
That's in the Taos News.
Which likely would have been set by statute, but that's the growth from that point in time to today. I'm assuming Taos is gonna be a higher valuation
I would assume
county.
so.
Class B, higher valuation. And so, yeah, that would put them at 30,196.
I think the fact that we've had a special election literally because of pay. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we can't get carried away. And I think the council, current council, mayor and council probably are very concerned about that. But I also think if you want to attract, a competitive race, you want to be able to attract a different demographic, you got to start looking at something, you got to change some stuff. And while you're looking at both Taos and Española, I would also would like for you guys to look at the difference in, hopefully in the mayor pay as well. In those two communities, plus the other ones that are comparable to Las Vegas. Oh, my God. And you all probably thinking, my God, we're really spending a lot of time on this issue. But I'll tell you what, this is a big issue. The number of counselors, the pay that the council gets, the pay that the mayor gets, all those factor into this. And then now that the county commission has done what they have, they increased, I don't know, 30 to 33%, 30 to 33,000 or 35. I can't remember the exact numbers. But I'll tell you, right now, it just happened. You know what I mean? And it's not just the commissioners. It's all the elected positions, treasurer, clerk, everybody changed. It all moved up, judges and all that kind of stuff. So those are things that I think we need to be very cognizant of. But this is probably one of the more important factors that people would consider when they go vote for charter changes or charter amendments.
Sure. Mr. Chair and commission members, one other thing to think about, I've seen this in other instances, is language that says X percent of one of these statutory salaries. So for example, again, assuming we're Class B high valuation, it could say 75% of a Class B high valuation county commission salary. Now, the difficulty is with that number of 30,000 and the current number of 10, to say, 30%. I don't know if that defeats making it attractive to people to serve, but 15,000 would be a little bit less than 50%. So it'd be saying 49% of a Class B county commissioner. But I have seen that done. And the reason some people use the percentage is again because the statute gets adjusted every few years. You don't have to go back to an ordinance or you don't have to go back to a charter change. It increases as the legislature increases the numbers. So that's also something to think about in all of this. You can pin it directly. You don't have to pin it at all. You can just determine. You can pin it directly, or you can do a percentage of a pinned amount. That
Or
makes
take
sense.
it out of the charter.
Correct, or take it out of the charter, put it back in ordinance, yeah.
Because if it does stay in the charter, this probably will be the sole thing that hangs it up, whether it lives or dies.
And that's.
If I had
that
to
is
bet on
something.
it, that's what's gonna make or break.
And the election can't be a multiple choice.
That's correct. That is correct. It can't be a multiple choice. It's up or down.
Pick one of the three, you know,
Yeah.
10, 15, 20, you know.
That is the difficulty with putting it in the charter. The charter's only reviewed every 5 years. It's subject to election, and these things can fail. And then you stay stagnant as a community with your leadership and the leadership you attract.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Gino, so if we were to consider the, pinning it directly to a percentage, or pinning it to a percentage, is that through ordinance or is that through charter?
Yes, it can be either.
Either
It can
one.
be either. And so it's been mentioned a couple times here. One of your options is to remove compensation from, or change the compensation paragraph to say compensation for commissioners and, councilors and the mayor shall be set by ordinance. That's one change that could be proposed. And then it's set by ordinance. Council vote.
So I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here, Gino. If we're able to get this thing approved, and it's on our next election, November 25, and I think you said at the last meeting or the meeting before that all these things are subject to be ratified 30 days after the election, something like that? Or, in other words, they don't go into effect.
They become effective after the election is certified.
So let's just say that we did something with compensation, whatever the number is. Can we make it effective immediately in that election that just approved the update, the change? Or do we have to wait for a whole new term?
I'm going off the top of my head on this, and I would say so because it goes to an election, I don't think it's as restrictive as when they make the improvements themselves. And so it could be effective immediately. However, I would probably recommend that it be effective as of a date certain. So let's say as of January 1, 2026 would probably be what I would recommend, so that you're not messing with
The 30 days.
with an election, and it's a tight election that's got to be recounted and all of these other things. I would make it subject to
January 1.
to a January 1.
That makes sense. I think we talked about that before with making it effective immediately. Okay. You were gonna say something, Joe, I'm sorry.
Ask a question. So do these have to be together? Like if we kept them in the charter, they have to stay in the charter, or could the number of council members be in the charter and the compensation be set in an ordinance? Can they be separated like that?
That's correct, it could be.
That's probably the smart thing to do. You don't want the whole thing to go down just because of a one item.
Correct. So it could be separated then, to clarify.
Yes, it can be separated into separate questions.
I like that idea.
Okay, looks like we've got some homework again for you, Gino, for you to get ready for us for the next meeting. Is there anything else to talk about in regards to compensation? Did we cover most of it? Real good questions, by the way. Everybody participated very well in that. I think this is one of the more important pieces of the charter. And I'm glad we've taken enough time to at least discuss it, ask for more information, and come back and hopefully make a good decision. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now let's move on to the part of the agenda that we were talking about earlier, because we jumped over to Gino for his information. So let's go back to the sections. So I don't know if we need to quickly update the other two members of some of the things we talked about in section 1. What time is it? 4:15? Okay. What's your time today? Is everybody okay with, we're running a little past 5? Is that all right? Is there, I don't know, did you get a chance to review the minutes Did it answer some of your questions, both you and Joe? Because we went through section 1 the last time, and although we didn't have too many items that we highlighted, not like this one, but is there any question that you might have in regards to that section 1? Or article 1, I should say.
I do not have any questions.
Okay.
Anytime,
Okay, so then, Cassandra, we're in Article 2? Okay. All right, well, let's just move on over to Article 2. And this one, we'll also do the same thing, hopefully, like suggested the last meeting, you all had a chance to read through this article and come up with any ideas or suggestions or items to be discussed. I'll open the floor up to anyone who went through this and saw something that really stood out. Anyway, at the end of the day, Gino, you're gonna make sure that we're clear in the legal sense of the document, not sort of stepping on the toes of state law or anything else, right? Yeah, okay. So I'll open up the floor for anybody to discuss anything that, well, let's do it this way. Let's start off with section 2.01, the corporate authority. And Gino talked a little bit about that earlier, and I think that may have covered what I think we needed there. So any discussion on .201? Hearing none, I think we'll go to powers and duties, section 2.02. So I think that sort of talked about the staggered terms on section C of 2.03. So I don't have anything on 2.02, powers and duties. Any questions in that area?
Section 2.02
Powers and duties.
C talks about removal from office, but I don't see anywhere in here that it has a process for that. And I'm just
I think
curious.
it's probably state law provisions, right, Gino?
I'm sorry.
Removal of office under 2.02C. Consistent with the state law providing qualifications and removal.
That's correct. There are portions in the municipal code. So I'll check to make sure that nothing has changed.
Okay.
When they state a process,
It does.
okay,
I think it's difficult to put in a charter the exact process because it could change literally from year to year. So if the legislature changes the law, we just follow alongside that and not have to recreate that piece, but okay.
I'm just making note that they always, seek attorney advice on removal of stuff like that.
Okay.
in 203C, or am I jumping ahead?
Anybody have anything else on 2.02? Let me ask, I don't know if this is the proper place, powers and duties, but we just had a censure, right? So I don't know what that means or doesn't mean. I think it's just a note on that elected official. But is there anything else that needs to be added to a censure?
That's the process I was looking for.
Right. So this is a tricky one. I've got to speak carefully.
I need to ask carefully then.
Yes.
We all do.
Yes. I don't see censure as a charter issue. It tends to be a discretionary issue within the governing body as far as self-governance goes. And censure itself does not have a legal effect, whether that's towards grounds for removal. There are provisions laid out in state law as it relates to malfeasance, misfeasance, all of those things. But censure is a method used by the governing body to keep each other in line. but it does not have a legal effect in and of itself. Does that make sense? And so I don't see it as a charter issue that the charter would put boundaries or definitions or restrictions on a censure process.
I look at it as a footnote.
It could be reference material if if there's a recall effort or a removal effort. It could be documentation supporting that. But in and of itself, it doesn't carry any weight or authority.
Okay. That answer your question? I think our question, I guess to some degree. Okay, let's go to 2.03, qualifications and election of officers. Anybody have any items that want to be discussed in that section?
Can't find it now.
So item B would change, right, from,
I've got a note in there to Crawford, as we do it with them.
from one to, yeah, from one to
Yeah.
two, so that
Yeah.
would change there once we, if that change would come about.
Do you see anything, Gino, in that section 2.03? Cassandra?
We were both just discussing 2.03C, and that as I revise concept 2, that it's going to have an effect on paragraph C, because you're looking at 4 that will be elected in year 1 and 4 that would be elected in year 3. So that language would have to be updated and changed. I think, though, the language, let's see, let me just skim it really quick. Okay. Cassandra, correct me if I'm wrong. If we stay as 4-member council, I don't think it needs a revision there. But if it does change to 8,
Then we would.
then it would need a revision.
And we would stipulate when it would change, right? So in other words, you would say it could be as early as 2027, right?
Right.
Or it wouldn't make it for 25, would it? No, because you couldn't be elected if
No.
you were, positions were open.
Right.
So
It
it'd
would
be
make it for the
27,
2027 election.
And then 2029.
Right.
So no matter, if we changed it, it's not gonna happen until 2027. Literally 2028.
What you could recommend is that the government, just so you know your options, this could be very complicated, but I'll explain it out. You could say effective January 1 of 2026, shall be 8 counselors. The existing council could appoint the next 4, or you could hold a special election. Again, it gets very complicated very fast. Or you could just say, beginning in 2027, here's who's elected. I think the thing you have to think through is you've got 4 counselors. They're currently staggered. It'll actually take you a couple of, in 27, you would elect some for 2 years and some for 4 years. That's the solution. In 27, it grows to 8. No, it grows to 8. But the two of the new 4 will be for 2 years and 2 will be for 4 years because of the way you have it staggered right now.
Okay, so they'd all be in by 27,
Yeah, and after that, they would go into,
the staggered.
yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to call out district numbers. So I'll have to think through that as I revise C. It'll say beginning with the 2027 election, there will be 8 districts. And we'll have to number the existing districts.
Because right now, we have, one counselor that won't be up till 27. And it's usually 2,
And
but
that
because
person
one
would
was-
stand for
right.
4 years. But since you're creating 4 and they need to be staggered, 2 of them will be for 4 years, 2 of them will be for 2 years, And then they'll go 4-year terms staggered the rest.
Okay, that makes sense.
Until
So we'll
we-
have, at the end of 27, starting 28, we'll have 8 counselors.
Yes.
4 possibly would be for a 4-year term, and probably 4 might be for 2-year terms.
4 will be for 2-year, 2 will have, sorry. 4 will have 4 years remaining on their term. 4 will have only 2 years remaining on their term. Your old counselors, some of them will naturally only have 2 years remaining. 2 of the new counselors coming in will only be elected for 2 years and then stand for election for 4 after that.
But we will have 8 by the end of 27,
On January 1st,
28.
28, 8 counselors will be sworn in.
So we don't have to wait till 29. It can move faster then.
Yes.
Boy, I think Cassandra's gonna have a good time with that one. Okay.
One question I have, and I don't know where it would be in here. When someone is elected on election days, whatever day that is, the first Tuesday in November, when do they take office?
January 1, and that's by state statute now.
Okay, thank you.
Ashley?
And this is kind of off the topic, but where is, I guess, like, where is election information? Because I feel like in the past, people have always asked, like, well, how do we know who the candidates are? Or, like, where's, who do we know? Like I've had a lot of people that don't really know when our counselors are up for election or not.
Terms up and all that.
Yeah, like, there's not really a whole lot of information. Is that something that, like, we could, I don't know, add in another letter about it being on the website, or at least, like, publicly?
We do usually put it on the website, and now that we've opted into having the county administer it, so it's on their website as well.
Okay, yeah, and does that say, I think maybe it does now, I'm not sure, but does it say which counselors are up for?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, there's a packet on there as well
Okay.
for the candidates.
On the clerk's website?
Yes.
The clerk section of the website?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because this is the first couple of elections that it went to them. It used to be here, right? The clerk's
Yes,
office used to handle
the
it.
mayor and council chose to opt into that in 21, so the first was,
Yeah.
22.
Yeah, it's changed a lot because you don't have to worry about the election to a degree, but you have to make sure you take care of all the incidentals in between here and then, yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I think it is important that people know where to find it.
Yeah.
And then we'll be on the radio, especially this round with the charter, giving information on that.
What, our next one is this November.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the counselors.
Yeah, which ones are up?
Yeah,
All of them are up
except-
except for Ward 1.
which is David?
David
Yes.
Ulibarri, yeah.
So anybody.
Everybody, and Marvin's
Well,
filling
he's
the
up
unexpired.
only because he was appointed.
Yeah, so he's taking over the 2-year
Correct.
term of the former mayor position, right?
Yep.
So there'll be 3 counselors for sure, possibly.
So the only ones that aren't up is Ward 1 and the judge
Are not up.
are not. They're up in 27. Because the council chose to extend their terms rather than shorten them when we opted in. They had the choice.
And all 3 of those will be 4-year?
Yes, 4 years.
So there goes our staggering of 2 and
So-
2.
No,
No,
Marvin's will still be 2.
yeah, so his would be 2.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Counselor Martinez, I should say. I better be careful. In family squabble there. Okay, anything with 2.03, we did C, D, and E, any consideration there? Council redistricting, 2.04, that's pretty much, we're waiting for the census, right, to get that up and running. And you'll just make sure that we're up to date with any legalities in the wording here, right, of this piece too. Okay. Vacancy in office. So that one's an interesting one. I don't know, Gino, I don't know if we should defer to our clerk to tell us how that works, because I think when, the mayor resigned, the previous mayor resigned, and they had to pick one from within, there was even rumor that there was gonna be a special election, and then you couldn't have an election because law didn't allow it. So that was like, that one section there got a lot of business.
So we had to follow state statute, basically, is what we had to do. And,
So the 1 year or more than a year and less than a year came into play, right?
it could not.
Or at all it didn't?
No, there was so many contradicting things within this section and, in the state statute. So we had our general counsel at the time, give us direction, and I don't know if everybody read that, but there was a press release on it and all of that. So, we do have to change this language, by all means. In looking at, we can't have a special election, of course, because we opted in to the county, right? So they only have special elections for ballot questions, not, for anything else, like to elect
Anybody running for
an
office.
elected,
Yeah.
yes, official, so we couldn't do, so we have to take that out of that section. Section, let's see here, C, where it talks about shall within 15 days of the vacancy appoint a qualified elector from the district to fill the vacancy. That's much too short of a time period. We ran into some issues with that. I don't know what you might recommend. I think other places do 60 days, 45 days, 60 days. And it also, if you read a little bit further down, it does say if the office is not filled within the 45 days of the vacancy, a special election shall be, we have to take that out completely because we can't have a special election for that. So I don't know what your recommendation might be on that, Gino.
Well, a lot of it is covered in, yeah, there was a comprehensive revision to the state election code. I want to say in 2018, 2017 timeframe. And it takes a while for our charter to catch up with that in comparison here. So I know a lot of this has been addressed. And so we'll just need to come back with proposed revisions and strike out.
Okay.
And then I'll bring the corresponding statute so everybody's aware of where it's coming from.
I think it's best for us to let them work on that. Is that fine with the commission?
I concur.
Yeah, okay. We'll let you take care of that. I thought the 1 year, more than and less than, but no, at the end of the day, you can't do anything because the election's not till 25, I mean. The way it ended up being, okay. So are we done with 2.05 vacancy in office? I guess so.
Yes.
I think we're done with those edits, right?
Right, and we'll look at that. Taking the special election out and all of that language, and then
It's not allowed anymore.
maybe putting language from state statute in there, or
Yeah,
That's what I would
Or-
recommend, just.
or just cross-reference it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, if state statute supersedes all this, might as well just put state statute in it.
and then compensation? Yeah, compensation 2.06, we've already sort of got that one going, so we'll jump over that guy. So let's go to 2.04, governing body procedures.
2.07.
Didn't have anything on that.
I have a couple of questions, I don't know if I can jump in. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
In looking at B, and this is section 2.07 under governing body procedures. I guess ever since I was here, I've always wondered how this piece works, but special meetings. You know, I was here before the mandated time periods of, you know, for the Open Meetings Act. So in my mind, and actually the council did pull a meeting while I was out of town. Not one of the times, but I was able to make it just prior to the meeting starting. But a special meeting can still be called for, but it has to fall within the rules, right? Of the Open Meetings Act.
So, different lawyers can have different opinions, but I do
starts out
have,
with that sentence.
I do have concern with the language that say special meetings may be called by 3 or more members of the council, because that's a quorum of the governing body, and they would have to get together and discuss whether or not they want a special meeting. And that could, in and of itself, cause a rolling quorum and a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Now, procedurally, it might be the clerk calling each of the members saying, do you want a special meeting? But which technically would not be a rolling quorum. However, it opens itself up for the clerk to end up being the conduit for a rolling quorum. So you can't do the 3 people, I talk to one person, then they talk to the third person, and we gather consensus. But if it's, hey, I'm Counselor 1, and hey, clerk, will you tell Counselor 2 that this is what I want, and will you tell Counselor 3 that this is what I want? Then we just open ourselves up for a little bit of risk. So I would probably, to stay safe, recommend 2 or more members of the council. Rather than 3, and then it eliminates that risk of
You said 2 or 4? What did you say there?
2 or more.
Oh,
No, not 2 or more. I'm sorry, just 2, simply 2, without the or more.
Unless we have 8.
Unless we have 8.
we could have 4?
Yeah.
I think at least with another commission that I'm on, usually the kind of rule of thumb is they're always asking, the chair always asks the clerk to ask for a poll of, instead of instead of having commissioners or counselors talk amongst each other, but through the clerk, it's basically the clerk calls, says, we're having a special meeting on this day, can you be there for quorum? And that is usually how they handle it. And if there's not a quorum, then they call everybody back and say.
Right.
So would that be a better practice to kind of go into versus it would kind of diminish any rolling quorum?
I'd like to look at I'll give you a non-answer, which is this. I'd like to look at how it's done in the uniform school board policies that are out there, and come back with some language on that. With a proposal on that.
No, I like that idea. I know they're inventing the wheel.
Sure.
I did have some questions on 478. And I should have just said it earlier, but that's pretty micro what we have in the charter right there. And I honestly, I don't even think it's necessary. I'm one that I don't think the language hurts anything, but I'd rather just be concise and accurate, and rather than have this type of micro wording and micromanaging within the document.
Which item are you talking
207A.
The first one, page,
Organizational meeting.
I mean, we're specifying that they review the mission and vision of the previous administration, which may or may not be their vision, the top 10 priorities of the previous administration, which may or may not be their priorities. And then we're also indicating, confirming the appointment of a city manager and the appointed officers. We don't even know if a city manager is going to be appointed. It could be a city manager that's already on board and is going to be just remain in place.
Isn't it a vote of confidence, though, in the appointed positions?
No.
No?
No, it's,
So-
I confirm.
So let me, and Gino, you might have to help me with this one, okay? I'll let him finish there.
Okay.
And Gino, if you don't mind, I'm gonna jump in. When I became a city councilor, the organizational meeting was the meeting of the acts, okay? So in other words, the new council came in and they literally appointed everybody, okay? Literally. I don't know if the manager got appointed, it could have been, but literally that was the acts meeting, okay? So that's, and then I'm sure that in the past, they just added mission and vision just to complicate things even more. I don't even think they ever talked about the priorities in the meetings that I was at. But it was every single department director was considered at that organizational meeting. So I don't think that that's continued since then, but at one time, that was the meeting, right, Cassandra?
And there is a section in state statute that addresses that, and it doesn't go into specifics like our charter does, where I think that's just outdated, and it just goes into too many details of,
So can you find out what
I have it right
Oh,
here. and
okay.
I-
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
showing it
Okay.
too, so
I've written down the
we
citation.
can.
It deals with, to summarize it, it deals with the organization of the body, so the officers, determination of officers essentially, and then determination of the appointees, essentially. But it doesn't go into all the policy stuff of, top 10 priorities, reviewing the mission and vision statement. That does tend to micromanage a little bit. That may be something for an ordinance. I think it's good that, for example, Santa Fe had an ordinance that said one time per year, the council shall get training on Open Meetings Act compliance and government transparency and ethics, basically. And so, okay, that's good, but that's an ordinance, not necessarily in charter. So I think we can again take a run at meshing what's in statute with what's in the charter.
Now, they don't do the organizational meeting, or they still do? Do they do all the directors or only the appointed ones? I'm talking manager,
The officers,
attorney,
yeah.
those ones, okay?
Just the officers,
So not the whole, all the directors, right?
no.
So it's not the same.
Because
that
they have to get the city manager in. And,
Yeah, takes care of that, okay. At one time, it was the axe meeting, you know what I mean? The new group came in and it was the new city council, brand new mayor, and they cleaned house, everything changed. That one meeting. And they try to make sure everything was in that meeting so that nothing would be left for the next meeting to take care of it. It was literally the axe meeting, that's what I used to call it. It was scary. Go ahead, Benito.
Mr. Chairman, I may be jumping ahead, but it seems like we have a reoccurring theme where we have many things in this charter that we're bound by statute. And I would maybe I'd make a recommendation that we have the city attorney go through and areas that should just be governed by statute within this document, that potentially he's able to point those out. And I think that makes our job a little bit more efficient because we can just say, okay, what's in here doesn't really need to be there. Let's just replace that with reference to state statute. And that would take a chunk of this document and update it automatically.
That could work. I don't want to kill Gino, but I think one of the neat things about reviewing it like we do, because I think what we're doing is we're giving him assignment sort of piecemeal, okay? What you're giving him a big assignment there, Benito.
Well,
it's
just up for discussion.
And you're probably right. But at the end of the day, I think at least we all have the idea of what was there before and now what we're actually getting an opportunity to do, with his clarification of this stuff. I don't want to send him this assignment and all of a sudden we have our 34-page document is now, 25 pages. Well, what do we not have anymore? You know what I mean? At least we're talking about it, giving it to him, come back to us, we approve it, move on to the next. But I think you're right.
And everything, we have to follow state statute, but to have the wording here gives the clarity to everyone, what the state statute says, or not. What we say in accordance with the state statute, to have the wording here.
So let me ask you, Gino, since you're the one that could handle all this one way or the other. I'm wanting to make sure that we all know what the item was and then let you take care of addressing it in a legal way. Because it probably would save a little bit of time for us, but at least we have the history of what was there before, and now we have the wording of what we're proposing moving forward.
By breaking it into pieces, the way that you've determined you're gonna go, section by section, I think that can help pace it for me and my team and also the expense to the city as far as, reviewing and doing the comparisons to revised statute. So I think by going section by section and breaking it up meeting by meeting, that's gonna help my pacing. I've got lots of attorneys to help me if I need to, but that said, I think I can do a lot of this. So that's one thing, that we just keep breaking it up by section. The other thing is, I do think it's an important discussion to reference items in statute versus pulling language in. And by the way, because we're a charter, we have flexibility even as it relates to state statute. So what I'll do is I'll pull in state statute, which more often than not has the best process. If there's something we feel needs to be localized and customized, then we can have that discussion. But what I'm very hesitant to do is pull the language. If we say, oh, we're gonna track a state statute, and we pull all the language in, those state statutes get looked at and revised every year. And we may not catch it. And then we may not be following the revised state statute. So I try and cross-reference as often as possible, state statute X. The council and the mayor shall comply, in appointing a vacancy shall comply with state statute X. Something of that sort, or be in compliance with state law is a broader statement. I'd rather be narrower than broad, but the election code or section 1-2-3 through 20, something of that sort. I'll get a feel for it as I review these, but I'm more apt to reference something than pull the language in because the language just changes too often.
So I'm gonna go back to Benito's original statement when he talked about this, and he says, this is too micro. Okay, and I think I like that theme, because you can't address every possible scenario, okay? And you have competent people hopefully doing this work. You don't need to micromanage, right? That's pretty much what you're thinking.
Yes.
So I'm going back to his original statement, and I'm saying, okay, how do we stay within that? I don't think it's the charter's business to run everything. You still need people to take care of these issues, people that hopefully are competent. And if not, I'm sure the process will take care of that individual. But I'm almost of the same opinion. It can't have every possibility in it.
Right, but you may miss possibilities, number one. But two, the charter is a guidance document, really. But the example with that one paragraph that you referenced, Commissioner Pacheco, you're going to review this document on this date and update a vision, and you're going to do this. That's a lot. Those are things that a governing body should take on its own.
Yeah.
If they want to do that by ordinance and say, okay, on this date, we're going to review the following, then that's up to the governing body. But yeah, it's, here's when you're going to brush your teeth and here's what kind of toothpaste you're going to use is probably a little bit much rather than saying have good oral hygiene.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for that section 2.07?
So have we come to any conclusion about what we want in section A?
He's gonna work on it. They're gonna work on it, I should say.
My only comment is just when we were talking about, pinpointing all of the things that that are state statute and whatnot, I think, at least for me, because I've never even really paid too much attention to the charter, it's also really great for me to see what was done or how it even came to be And also, I think the pace that we're going at it really makes me like comprehend what we're discussing exactly. So every time we come to a new section and he brings up like what the state statute is or what is possible and what's not, it's just kind of a little bit easier for some of us newbies some of us youngsters to kind of just understand what's being talked about. And
I think we appreciate that. Sometimes we think we know it all and we really don't. We have never asked those questions before, and now we want, we're trying to set this thing up so that the future generations take over. And at least there's some understanding, so it's important. I think it's very important to get all the different perspectives.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question on 207E. And maybe it's just, I'm not comprehending that correctly, but when I read that, it says, all actions and decisions of the governing body shall be by a simple majority of the members present, except as follows. 1, ordinances and resolutions which shall be enacted by affirmative vote of a majority of all the members of the governing body. What's the difference between those two things?
Going through it right now.
I see the difference in number 2. 1, and the end of the sentence there of E seem to be the same thing.
Which takes us back to our other conversation from last meeting, was governing body, is that governing body including the mayor? Or,
Right.
Well, yeah, okay,
Or-
so that.
right, so like that opens it up for larger discussion, is governing body including the mayor, or should it be identified solely that it's the voting members, right? Because mayor should only vote in the event of a tie. So what is governing body?
So if we're following what Joseph was talking about there, which I now recall, all of a sudden it sort of comes back. Thank you very much.
Yeah, me too.
But I really thought that, Gino, you were going to possibly try to fix that for us. Governing body,
Yeah, that's a placeholder of identifying.
yeah,
And to give all members of the Charter Commission context, there are some contradictions, and Commissioner Dominguez was referencing it. There are some contradictions. There are places where it says there shall be a majority vote of the governing body, period. And then there's another section that says the governing body is comprised of the 4 councilors and the mayor. Okay, so now go back to the first section, majority vote of the councilors and the mayor. That's what it's saying. And then another section that says, but the mayor only votes in instances of a tie. And so there are points that they get crosswise with each other. And I want to do simpler corrections in the charter, and then the ordinances can define out some things as the body decides. Yes.
Wouldn't the simplest fix be, we use the term governing body to mean the city council and the mayor, and then everywhere where we just mean the city council, just say city council instead of governing body?
There are instances where that is done also. There are instances where it's not.
Mostly there are instances where it's not.
Yeah, mostly there are instances where there's not. For example, I believe it's the removal of the city manager. It's got to be a majority vote of the council. Now you've got 4 members. What are the odds of having a tie on that, right? By the way, I practiced this as a kid, so I can do that. 2 votes and 2 votes. Yeah. So, yeah, what are the odds of a split on that? And it says it only occurs on a majority vote of the council. So yes, all 3 of those instances are out there, and we have to scrutinize that. So I will circle that.
We could put in a phrase every time, with the option of the mayor breaking a tie. We could put that in every single time.
in a contract, you always have a list of definitions, right?
Yeah.
So is that something we can also do to some degree here? In other words, saying governing body, when we talk governing body, it means X.
In the beginning, isn't it?
It's there.
Yeah, but it contradicts itself through the document, right?
That's right. I think the definition is fine. The clarity of when the vote counts and the ties, et cetera, the other instances are where we have to be very mindful. Okay.
So we're gonna let you take care of that, Gino.
So just back to my original question, what is the difference between
1 and 2.
not 1 and 2, but that last sentence of a simple majority of the members present, and then ordinance and resolution shall be enacted by an affirmative vote of a majority of all the members of the governing body?
Okay, yes.
Are we saying the same thing there, or is those
We're not. There are instances where I believe ordinances or passage of ordinances is one example, where it's got to be a majority vote of the governing body, meaning 3 votes out of 5 have to pass. So you need a minimum of 3 votes, otherwise it fails. Where it says a simple majority of the members present, you may only have 3 present. You have a quorum of the governing body if there are 3 present. Therefore, 2 will be an affirmative vote, okay? Now, I'm gonna raise another issue, though. If you have these instances where it's a vote of the majority of the members, okay, of the governing body. Therefore, you need 3 votes, but you only have 3 counselors present. 2 counselors vote yes, 1 counselor votes no.
It didn't pass.
It doesn't pass because there's no tie for the mayor to vote and cast the 3rd vote. So there's gamesmanship that happens in that instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's out for
So how do we fix the word?
Sometimes it motivates members not to show up for a meeting so that there isn't a tie of 2-2 and the mayor votes and votes a certain way. So 1 will be absent and it's a 2-1 vote.
Did I clarify it, Benito?
That clarifies it. Thank you.
That was a
Mr.
tricky
Chairman.
one.
That was a tricky one.
I think you're just looking for the tricky one.
Well, the problem with that one is it's not clear, right?
Yeah. You need to
Along with all
clarify it.
the rest of the issues.
Should
I don't
there-
know if this,
Should there be language in that? Is it-
well, he's gonna look at it, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when it pertains to.
I'm sorry, Gino. That's all I'm gonna say.
Is he highlighting all these changes we want?
I'm
Sandra, can you
writing
verify
them as
that?
fast as I can. Let's see.
Well, F defines a
I want to look at C and,
Yeah.
I mean, not C and D, but D and E in relation to each other. So, okay. 2.07. D and E.
It's ahead there, doesn't it?
You get it, Gino?
I got it.
Okay. Let me ask you, Gino, and I don't know if this is the proper place for this or not. You know, back in the 1800s when I was here, we didn't have a consent agenda, okay? It makes no sense to me. Especially in an environment where, you know, back in the day when we started the 2 city council meetings per month, because there was only one before. The first one was called a work session. So what that meant that the work session was designed for all the committees to come and report to council, give them all the feedback on, you know, every single item that we're going to be discussing at the regular council meeting, okay? So the work session pretty much just was an informational thing for the city council, mayor and council, so they could take in all this information to get into the nuts and bolts of what's coming up at the regular meeting. So then all of a sudden, we go to our regular council meeting, and we had on the agenda all those things that were discussed during the work session, okay? So really, it's not really a meeting, it's more a work session. We're exchanging ideas, getting information in and out, okay? Later on, it became two separate meetings, okay? So it's no longer the work session getting the data. Now it's a meeting with agenda items to be considered from A to Z, positive or not, a negative vote, move on, go to the next meeting, do it again. So in lieu of the fact that we don't do that anymore, now we have two meetings, okay? You guys have one meeting, like I think this week, you'll have another one next week, okay? And I'm saying, well, the whole idea of the committees just fell apart. It's gone. It still works to some degree because depending on the director, they'll bring it through the process, get it on the agenda, update the mayor, the manager, and the people that need to be done, and then come for an official vote. So all of a sudden, after I've been gone a few years, all of a sudden, where's this consent agenda? Well, how did they come up with a consent agenda if they'd never had a work session? Okay, does that make any sense? Or go ahead,
I mean, I
Cassandra.
can answer
She's jumping
that.
up and down.
The consent agenda basically is for those items that don't really need discussion, so they're, like let's say we have a contract
renewal
in,
or
for
something
4
like that,
years,
yeah.
renewal of the contract each year, and there's no questions. Now, the council can always pull an item off the consent agenda and discuss it, so they have that option too. So it's trying to make the meeting go faster.
Well, and I guess in the case where a new person comes in, has no idea what you're talking about, extending a 4-year contract, another 4 years, or renewing it for year 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. Those kind of things are somewhat confusing to the general public, you know, how do we continue to inform them of what are the business items that we're taking care of on their behalf? You know what I mean? That's why I think, and it's not just now, whatever I'm talking about now, the whole work session thing, that died some few years ago, okay? But really, the committees were a big integral part of the work session. You know, you had utilities come and make a presentation on, you know, gas rate increases possibility. You had all these other committees, finance committee wanting to change some kind of an item related to the finances. All of these committees reported to mayor and council at the work session, and then weren't taking official action until the regular meeting. And everybody had an idea of what was going on. It was more sort of the formal vote was taken at the council. But that's not here no more. Now we have 2 meetings, you know what I mean? So I'm just asking a question like that because is this where we would talk about stuff like that? Because literally we have 2 meetings a month. And I don't know if that's the best way to represent our community. And the fact that we have very few committees, Mayor, I think, that operate compared to the old days. Every single department had committees. You know, there was a police advisory committee, there was community development committees. Every single department, streets had a committee. That committee would report which streets they were working on, where the list was for the next street to be considered to be paved. Not with special funding from the legislature, from within funds that we had within our own budget to take care of street repairs, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 blocks, just to take care of business items right away. But that's not the concept that we have anymore, so I just thought I'd throw a wrench. I just thought it would make more sense because we were committee-oriented back in the day.
Mr. Chair, I have a question as a result, and I went over to page 19 earlier, just to the section in the charter on boards, commissions, and advisory committees. But I have a question for the clerk. Are there governing body only committees? Like a finance committee or a public works committee whose membership is only governing body members?
No.
Okay. Again, I use Santa Fe as a reference just because I was city attorney in Santa Fe for so long. But one of the ways they used their, I'm sorry, I lost the agenda, consent agenda. One of the ways they used their consent agenda was if it went through a council committee, and their finance, their public works, and there was a third or fourth. Council only, if they got a majority vote there, and they had 3 members of the governing body on that committee, then it would move on to the consent agenda because 3 members of the governing body had already seen it and approved it. So that's how I've seen it used, is it's gone through a governing body subcommittee and come in here. But then I've also seen it just for sort of ministerial items that typically don't have a lot of discussion.
That
Either
makes
or.
sense to me. That makes sense, especially if it's a, committee made up of the governing body or members of the, not to exceed a quorum, I guess. I think that makes a lot of sense. See, 'cause what you had in the past, prior to this administration, I guarantee you there was directors that were coming in and just throwing a whole bunch of stuff in the consent agenda. I guess the manager approved it and the mayor approved it. Boom, it was there. No discussion. Those items, you wanted to vote for all of them except one. Too bad. It's a package,
You do always have the
The
option
to pull it off.
to pull it
So they
off,
can
to
do it,
pull a
right.
single item out of.
Yeah, but you have to ask for that at the beginning of the meeting, right, during the approval of the agenda. So that's pretty much the thing. I really like the idea of the council-only committee with a consent agenda.
Except you don't have council-only committees.
We don't, but the mayor can take care of that. That's up to him.
And something to think about, well, you could create by charter council-only committees. Or the council could the council could recommend that to the community to vote on that, but that could be something when we get over to boards and commissions, whether or not there's that. I do think when you've got 5 members versus 9 with the mayor, you have a better ability to break into council committees. Again, using Santa Fe as the reference, they have 9 members of their governing body, so it might be easier for them to break into smaller subcommittees. And you can have a quorum of the body on those subcommittees because you would be advertising and complying with the Open Meetings Act. So you could have 3 members of the governing body on a finance committee, 3 members of the governing body on a public works committee.
Sounds good. Good to know the differences, but I don't know, the consent agenda's always driven me crazy because I think in the past, directors used it as a tool to really circumvent a lot of the work that the council needed to know the details of. But it was all put together, nobody questioned it, and, it drove me crazy. Especially in consideration that we don't have a work session anymore, where all those ideas and all those items are brought up for full discussion and full disclosure to the community and the mayor and council. And that's the thing. Go ahead, Mayor. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. We've added a lot of stuff so that you could get in the discussion.
And I guess I'll answer these questions that pertain to history, I guess, and being that I've been here 6 years. Going to the work session and, a regular meeting versus 2 regular meetings now. So under OMA now, changed in 2012 or 16, Gino? Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So now there's only 3 exceptions to having meetings, which is a regular meeting, special meeting, and emergency meeting. So you can't have technically a work session, like under OMA, there's nothing that pertains to a work session. So the heading of each regular meeting, that's one of the reasons why they're considered regular meetings. The other part of having when that's first meeting was a work session and the regular meeting, at that time, the way things were happening was that, and Cassandra, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd have one agenda, we'd have all these agenda items, we'd discuss them the whole meeting, and then came the second meeting, and there was discussion again, and it was like, these duplication of the 2 meetings, so it was like, well, if we're gonna have the meeting, might as well make the decision right away, right? Because I know the concept of the work session when it was first initiated, again, remember 2010, this was prior to the OMA and only those 3 exceptions for advertising of meetings, was having just that work session that's, clear out all the details, and then the next meeting will be out in an hour. But that wasn't happening. Based off of when I came in 2018, it was just basically a rerun with additional items to that second meeting. Am I correct? Is that fair to say, Cassandra?
Yes, so they would have, in the work session, there would be more discussion and give the departments or the city manager more work to do and bring back more for the regular meeting.
And then from there, the second meeting was, let's say the first meeting was 3 hours, the next meeting was probably 4 or 5 hours, which you already discussed it, so as you're discussing it, might as well take the action. That's kind of how that transpired into,
And I didn't know
Yeah.
that there was only 3 ways to have a meeting.
yeah.
Yes, to further what the mayor said as far as that goes, what ends up happening, has ended up happening is that when a governing body sees the need for a work session, maybe there's a particular topic or 2 or 3 topics that we don't want to take 3 or 4 hours at a regular meeting, they can call a special meeting, and with what's technically called a special meeting under the Open Meetings Act, they can call a special meeting as a work session to say, okay, let's hammer out this particular issue, relating to water storage at Story Lake or something. But, let's carve out this one issue. We'll have a special meeting, everybody will do their presentations, but we're not gonna put it in the middle of one of our regular meetings so that we're going till midnight. And so you have the opportunity to have the work sessions, but now more often than not, it's a special session. You guys aren't on per diem, so that's not a problem. We've had some governing bodies where they're on per diem per meeting, get in trouble with the AG's office because they kept adding special meetings so that they could get extra per diem. And so you really wouldn't have that problem, but the one thing to think about, I once had to do a chart for Santa Fe Public Schools because they were doing 2 work sessions and 2 regular meetings per month.
Every week.
Every week. And the amount of staff time and preparation for each one of those meetings starts going up like a hockey stick. So the more meetings you have, the more staff preparation there is. Lots of things to keep in mind when it comes to work sessions, special meetings, et cetera.
So let me ask you, Mayor, if you don't mind, in a way to get the community more involved in committees, okay? In your view of the way the structure is now, how do we get the committees energized again so we can get community involved? So that those folks have an opportunity to give input on pieces of legislation for you all to consider and not have to worry about all these other parameters and all this advertising and all these special things that need to be done with the Open Meetings Act. Would that be helpful for you as mayor right today, getting more community members involved?
Going into history and versus where we are today, I know that, within our committees, the initiative that's been taken now is, we've filled pretty much planning and zoning, DRB, which we had vacancies, and I don't think the effort to fill these committees was made. Right now, they're, with the exception to, I think, the police advisory committee, there was some issues. We had, prior to me coming in, resignations come in just because of the way the charter reads. The charter reads that you put guidelines in place, and then the committee, well, they weren't too happy with the guidelines that were kind of being drafted. So that's, one thing that, hopefully when that comes, you guys will address that. But, as far as committees now, we're making every best effort. If counselors aren't giving me names, I'm putting in names, just to make sure that we feel at the end of the day, to me, and it's not just putting individuals that are gonna be, and I hate to say this word, rubber stamps, is we want individuals that are gonna have some questions. They're gonna do the research and do the homework, because if they're, how would you say, us as elected officials, yes, we're in the public and in the community, but I don't think that our input, the value of the input of the regular citizens is more important than what ours is. because at the end of the day, we serve the community. And getting these committees set up with citizens is how the government should work. You know, you get these committees based off of their recommendation. They're not the elected officials, have no biases one way or another on how things go, but they do have the best intent for the community as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I just hope, Mayor, that we have a process to allow that information to get to mayor and council without violating the Open Meetings Act and all that kind of stuff.
And I think pretty much every committee, I think with the exception, as I mentioned, is the police advisory, I think every one of those
Is filled.
committees is meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we have an airport advisory.
Utilities, we don't have the public works, which as far as I've been here, 6, 7 years now, the public works, I don't think that I've been around, hasn't been.
There used to be one, yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, all the committees that have been since I started are all in order. DRB, planning and zoning, I mean, those ones are required by state statute, so.
That's pretty interesting. Well, hopefully we didn't beat this horse to death, but I think it's important to get the input, especially that you're here, Mayor. I appreciate that information.
Just the history, I know, we
Yeah.
could talk, but I mean, I was just sitting listening. I think it's important that you guys understand, again, in 2010, there's a lot of, and this is probably where Gino is gonna be very valuable, is there was no, too much effort. I think OMA was it 9 that it really started? The official OMA, having to abide by that. So, and the charter was 2010, so that was at the beginning of the concept of Open Meetings Act, so a lot of that now into committees and everything has taken a drastic change throughout the years. There's been updates, I think 18 was probably the most recent. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
they're trying to think what the most recent are, but yeah, I've had to do updates to my presentations in the last few years.
Well, Mayor, I want you to know we are trying as hard as possible to confuse our attorney. And he's been able to answer a lot of questions. He's gonna go back and do homework again. Because especially after Commissioner Pacheco modified a lot of these items. And we're having to make sure that we cover those items. But no, we're grateful that you all appointed, an attorney to go through this process with us. I'm just giving, Commissioner Pacheco a hard time and
I
possibly,
think we're fortunate that Gino is.
I think it is, and especially with a background.
Gino does, I know he gives the presentations to the state, and so I think we have the perfect guy right now to advise you guys.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Anything else? Gino, do we have an idea where we're going? Are we at, to some degree?
Yeah, I think we're going this way and that way.
Which way?
No, your progression through raises a lot of issues, and I think you've got a lot of work, and you're being very diligent as a commission. You're not coming in with the preset agenda of, I only want to look at this and I only want to change that. But you're going line by line, and that's a level of diligence that's really good. We've got some decent timeframes, but we'll be accelerating with each meeting as we go along.
Okay, if we're done with 2.07, we should at least try to get 2.08 done. Any questions about that section, or does there anybody else have anything else on the past section? Cassandra, you had a chance to look at some of these things that affect you? No, okay. Anybody have any questions in that regard? 2.08, thank you, Mayor.
I was curious, 208A, number 3, an example of a franchise. I don't understand what that's about.
Extend a franchise?
Yeah, grant, renew, or extend a franchise. Do we do anything like
The
that?
city has a franchise agreement with P&M, the cable company, something like that. Those
Thank
are
you.
contracts.
And for context, it's different than McDonald's. We think of franchises
Right.
as
Right,
the chains.
okay,
We have franchises that grant access to our right-of-way, our streets, et cetera. Mainly, it's utility type issues. So cable lines, gas lines, electric lines.
Who's wondering about McDonald's or Burger King?
You get free lunch here?
Yeah. Okay, well then, we've got as far as we can. I don't know, I think it's 5:20, right? Is that what it is? Yeah. 5:20? So, we weren't able to get as far as I was hoping to get Article 3 as well. And this section of the mayor is pretty important. I know, Cassandra, our next meeting is scheduled for February, right?
No, January 22nd.
20, oh yeah, I think that's the new one,
Because
right?
we're doing the
Yeah.
two.
22nd, okay. So is it okay with the committee if we take up that section at that meeting? Yeah, Article 3, I think it's an important section. We need to talk about, I think we're covering really the meat and potatoes of the charter right now with these first initial sections. Then we'll start getting into some very, legalese stuff that I think our attorney will get more involved with. But I really believe that we need to make sure we spend enough time taking care of this next section. So is that fine with members of the committee? Okay.
Maybe 3 is meatier than I know, but it's short. Maybe we could shoot
Well,
for
we'll
3
keep,
and 4?
yeah, we'll try to do 3 and 4. Yeah. But I'll tell you, especially with the information you brought us, Gino, in regards to those 2 scenarios, and now we have more variations of more scenarios that we've assigned you to do for the next meeting, but we'll take care of those ones first while they're still fresh in our mind, and then we'll go ahead and go from there. So if there is nothing else for us to discuss, is there anything else you want to add, Gino? You have your list?
Yeah, I've got my list. Chair, commissioners, again, I think it's just a diligent process. And each time I draft up these concepts, I'm going to continue labeling them as concepts. You're working through them, you're discussing them, but we don't need to finalize anything today. And so we don't need to feel like, oh, we've addressed this, we're done, and we can't revisit it. These will each be living, breathing concepts till the time that you need to start making decisions on your recommendations, later, which I think is in the March timeframe. Is that what we were looking at? I think we were looking at narrowing things down in the March timeframe.
If you can do me a favor, Cassandra, send us all an email with the dates and time again, okay? Because I went off of what we had on our what do you call it, our minutes, and I want to make sure that I got all the meetings in properly.
I think it was in that last email.
Yeah, I'll have to double check. Any other business to be brought before the commission?
Are we requesting Mr. Madrid?
Yes, if you can look at that too, bring in Morris in for a discussion in regards to the budget for the next meeting. Anything else? So if I hear none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Then we adjourn.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Cruz?
Yes.
Commissioner Arianes? Commissioner Dominguez?
Yes.
Commissioner Brett?
Yes.
Commissioner Pacheco?
Yes.
I have a motion by Commissioner Dominguez, a second by Commissioner Arianes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Sandra, Dino, Mayor, members of the commission. Benito, we're glad to have you and Joe back.
Thank you. Washington was nice, but they could just keep it over there. It was doom and gloom over there. We don't need it here close to us. Oh, it's more so the weather and just almost put me in a state of depression.
Was it a vacation?
I'll be present.
Yeah, we went for Christmas.
I'll be in.
On this list for work. Like today, I could wait till today to do all these edits.
For work.
Oh, really? No. Plus,
Maybe let's just set up a time again.
I see, that's how I see it.
I just sent you an email. Okay. Because I found on the municipal
I
league
could see all
site
that,
a
and it's
listing of all the
evidence-based that
municipalities
there's
and
a high
their
rate of
populations.
depression and
So
suicide
that'll
up there in the
help us pick
Washington
out.
area.
The ones that are closest.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
We have a sign.
Yes, sir. I was scribbling.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're grateful that you have the experience of the city of San Diego, you know what I mean? That's not really the best example, but I'll take it, bro.
Well, and with the presentations I do throughout the state, I'm reviewing everybody's ordinances.
I really think so.
You know who calling me a while back?
Nice seeing you. Thanks for your diligence and all of that.
No, it's all right.